This section, we'll be going over the warping or time syncing. Warping is extremely important, but it's also the most tedious and takes probably the most amount of time. Now, you might ask, what is warping? Warping is taking very small slices or samples of each track and then stretching or compressing them. Now, I can actually show you what that means if you just double click on your file. Some of your actual tracks might look like this, and all you got to do is just kind of scroll it up and you can see the whole waveform file of your song. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is set our first beat or our first hit, and that's the 1.1.1 as it's called, which is just first measure, first note, first bar, pretty much. And what you want to do is click the warp. Now, basically, the computer has guessed, based on the track, where all of the hits are, the major bass kick hits are. Now, all we need to do is actually zoom in all the way, find our first 1.1. We're just going to right click and then set 1.1 here. Just drag that over a tiny bit more. It's not the spot. That actually is a lot better. And we'll zoom out and then do a listen back. Now, to do a listen back, you need to turn on the click track or the metronome, which is this guy right here. What that does is you just hear that sound. And all that is again, it's just a guide, and you want to make sure that your song lines up with that ticking. I'm going to turn the track on, enable it, and we're going to make sure that it syncs up. It won't sync up because I haven't set my actual warp markers, and I'll show you how to do that next. But this is just kind of like a test that I always do to see if it somehow guessed right. Okay, it's getting that, as we call it, the DJ world, sneakers in the dryer or train wreck sound, where there's two beats that are slightly off and they just get more and more off and it sounds really bad. Now what we want to do is actually warp it. We've set the BPM, we've actually enabled the warping. We want to just right click here and we want to warp from here. The computer is really good at finding those slices and then stretching them or compressing them. So this is the little slice here, and that's what it's doing in essence over the course of the full track. Right here, all those yellow marks are actually like definite warp points where it's found that it's slightly varied and then it moves it in. Ableton Live has been doing this for years, and I have to say that 99% of the time, if your song was made in the last 10 years and it's used with computer drums, it gets it right. So just gonna do a quick listen back to make sure that everything is in sync. Go to the beginning of the track, put our cursor here. You can actually see the major hits. Sounded pretty good to me. So what I like to do is I'll minimize that, go into our range view, and we'll listen in the middle. Sometimes the track does wander, it's a computer, it doesn't know everything, something might throw it off, a little breakdown. So if I listen in the beginning and end, that gives me a good sense that the whole track is warped or time synced. Now again, what I'm listening for is that the track, the song, and the metronome are perfectly in sync with each other. That's sounding good. I like to do it at the end also. Sexy as hell. And everything sounded really good. So that's actually a original track that I produced with local Sydney rapper Punch Drunk. And this next track is electro pop, kind of Dutch house sounding track that I did a remix for Godier. So we're keeping it very Australian here. And I'll also need to warp this one. And it's pretty much the same deal as the first track, but it's got a little bit of an intro. So we're just gonna listen to this to find our 1.1.1, our first hit, as I'll call it. All right, that one's really off. This is gonna be a good test. We're gonna warp the track, and we're gonna set our first hit right there. Do a listen back. We've got the train wreck effect going on. It's not good. Now we need to go in. We want to set our warp from here. Now there's 3 other settings that you can use. There's warp from here is the first one. That's the one I mainly use. There's warp from here start at 125 BPMs, and there's warp from here straight. And there's also these 2 other ones. Honestly, if I can't get a good warp, I then end up trying to use these 2 here. It's like anything with the audio production world. It's a lot of trial and error. I'd say experiment with everything, mess up, fail. It's a good thing to fail when you're producing. It's the only way to learn. So just warp from here, and it should do exactly what it did on the other one, since it's a computer-based drum house type of track. It's already sounding a lot better. I'm gonna zoom out of here, go into the middle. Again, I'm making sure that the song and the metronome are lined up, and just drag that one out and go to the end. Everything is sounding fantastic. Now this last one here, I'm just gonna give you one more example of warping. This is kind of a minimal house, deep house track, for lack of a better term. Another remix that I did for artist Tosh Parker, who is coincidentally Gaudier's girlfriend. Just a little side fact. We'll just go in, same deal, warp. We're gonna find our 1.1.1, our first hit. She's taking back the... All right, that's way off, as most people can hear. That is going to be our first hit. So I want to right click there, set 1.1. Apologize for that. Let's get that right there. Double click, and it should be lined up. Now it's because this track is naturally 120 BPMs and the metronome is 125, so what we need to do is go to our trusty warp from here. And all you got to do is you can look and listen, and you see all these points. They're already lined up. You zoom in. Those big hits are bass hits. They're kick hits. Sounded good. Let's go into the middle. And the end. There you go. All of our songs have been warped or time synced, and they're ready to be overlaid, as I call it, track overlaid, and then they'll be ready to be mixed.